Thanksgiving. Wasn't I clear about the fact that I didn't like being up here? I mean, I thought I had. It was so clear. And Claudia called me again. Annabelle said, do people give you a lot of notice when they ask? I'm like, no, she just calls me on the phone. Julie, I feel like the Lord has given you a message for the ladies. I said, no, he didn't. Let me tell you, he has not given me a message. And I said, and I'm busy this week. I have stuff to do. I don't have time to prepare a message either. And, she kept talking to me. And I said, well, what is it on anyway? Just in case. So she said, oh, it's about when David's running from Saul. And I said, oh, I know I don't have a message on that. Just no. So I went home and I said, well, I'll pray about it, though. I told her no, but I'll pray about it. So I go home and I thought, well, let me just open up the study just so I can give it my best effort in praying about it. So I open it up, and it doesn't say anything about David running from Saul. It says that David is waiting. He's been anointed and he's waiting, and all the trials he goes through while he's waiting. I said, God, I am not good at waiting. I fail at waiting. Every time he asks me to wait, I totally screw it up. So no, I can't do this. So I closed the study and put it away. And I thought, well, I'm just going to read something else. So I open up my book that I'm reading. It's called Authentic Faith. And I open it up, and I kid you not, the title was The Excruciating Exercise, The Discipline of Waiting. So I closed that book, and I was like, you are not funny, and I am not teaching. So that by then I know, okay, I'm supposed to teach, but I'm not really ready to receive it yet, and I'm not ready to call Claudia back. So I go about my day for ignoring God. I have to take my son to the orthodontist, and so I hate waiting, so I grab a book. I'm going to read a book. So a totally different book. I'm like, I'm not grabbing my Bible study, and I'm not grabbing my Authentic Faith, because I don't want to read about waiting. So now this is funny. So I open this up again, just bookmark, open it up. This is what I read. How do we get to the morning, to the sunshine, to the joy? There is only one way, by waiting for it. We can't hurry the dawn, no matter how anxiously we pace the floor or how impatiently we watch the clock. And so the question is not, do we wait or not wait, because waiting is all we can do. The question is, how will we wait? Will we wait well, or will we wait poorly? So here I am, and together we're going to learn what God's word has to say about waiting. So let's pray. God, I thank you. I thank you for your word. I thank you for your faithfulness. And God, I thank you that sometimes you call us to do things that are out of our comfort zone. And God, I thank you that you just are molding and shaping us. God, I pray that you show us through your word how to wait well, how to wait on you, and how to become more like your son every day. Fill me now with your words, God. I only want to speak what you have to say. In the name of Jesus, amen. So we're all waiting. Whether we're waiting in the grocery store line, whether we're waiting at the bank, whether we're waiting in traffic, we're all waiting. And statistics say that an average 70-year-old has waited for 3 years of their life. And that's a lot. Isn't that a lot of time? That's a lot of wasted time. And so as I was thinking about waiting, I thought, sometimes I'm okay with waiting. Sometimes I'm not okay, but sometimes I'm okay with it. So for example, if I go to the bank at 11 o'clock, avoiding the morning rush and avoiding the noontime rush, I don't expect to wait. I expect to go in, get my business done, and get back out. But when I have to wait, that's when I get frustrated. That's when I get a little out of sorts and irritated. But now if I go to Costco on Saturday, I know I'm going to wait. I know that place is going to be packed, and I'm going to be waiting. If I go to the post office at Christmas time, I have prepared myself to wait because I know it's inevitable. When I get pregnant, I know that I'm not going to be holding that little bundle of joy next week. I know that I'm going to be waiting about 9 months for that baby. And I like that waiting. I anticipate that 9 months of waiting. I need to get myself ready. I need to get my house ready. I need to get my family ready for another one. No, I'm not having another one, but I need to get prepared. And and God's still preparing that little one. He's still molding and fashioning that little person to come into the world. And that waiting time is good. That's a blessed waiting time. I anticipate that waiting time. So if I could just take that attitude and apply it to every other area of my life that I'm waiting, then I think I would wait well. I think we would wait well with that kind of attitude. When we look in the Bible, everyone's waiting there too. If we look at Noah, God said to Noah, build an ark to preserve your family and the animals, and I'm going to flood the earth. But God didn't say when he was going to flood the earth, how long this process was going to take. And he just told Noah to build the ark. So Noah faithfully begins day after day building the ark. And God gave very specific plans, and Noah followed those plans day after day. And you know that sometime over those years and years and years that he was building the ark, that his friends and his neighbors came to him and tried to convince him otherwise, that God didn't really tell you to build an ark, and you didn't really hear from the Lord, that it's never even rained before. How is he going to flood the earth? And they tried to deter him from God's word, from what God told him specifically to do. But Genesis 6:22 says, Noah did everything just as the Lord commanded him. Noah was faithful to do what God had told him to do until God gave him the next step. So while Noah was building an ark, God was building a man during that waiting time. Now look at Moses. God put Moses out in the desert for 40 years. But during that 40 years, as he was tending his father-in-law's flocks, Moses learned how to survive in the desert. He learned how to find shelter in the desert. He learned how to find safety and what the dangers to look for in the desert. Then God took Moses and said, go into Egypt and tell the Pharaoh to let my people go. God didn't tell him how many times to go to the Pharaoh and say, let my people go. He just told him to do it. So Moses obeys, and he goes in and tells the Pharaoh, God says, let my people go. Pharaoh said no, and makes things worse for the Israelites. Then Moses goes back one more time, says, God says to let my people go. Pharaoh says no, and then makes things even worse for the Israelites. God didn't tell Moses, how many times to go, but he just kept going. And each time, things got a little bit worse for the Israelites. And then with the plagues, they started getting a little bit worse for the Egyptians. God was working on the circumstances. He was orchestrating the circumstances so that the Israelites didn't want to stay in Egypt anymore, and those Egyptians didn't want the Israelites in Egypt anymore. So much so that on the 12th time that Moses went to the Pharaoh and said, let my people go, he agreed to let them go. But the Egyptians were saying, here, take my gold, my jewels, my precious stones, take everything, just get out of Egypt. God was behind the scenes orchestrating events so that his people could go in prosperity. A lot of times, when we're called into service or just called to do something, we expect that God will open up all the doors immediately, that he'll clear the path for us, that he'll remove all the obstacles of getting from here to where he's told us to be. But he doesn't promise that. He promises to be with us. God was with Moses every time he went to the Pharaoh, but he doesn't promise to remove those obstacles. God's concerned with the outcome. He's concerned with getting us there, but he's also concerned with our character, developing us along the way. And a lot of times we need to wait for that. If we've been called to service, most likely we've been called to wait. 20 years ago, God called me to be a foreign missionary, but here I am still waiting to be placed in the mission field. But that's part of God's plan. There are many Bible verses that tell us to wait. Psalm 27, verse 14 says, wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he will strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. If while I am waiting, I need more courage, if while I am waiting, God needs to strengthen my heart, that's not a quick and easy wait. That's a wait that's going to require some endurance. Isaiah 40:31 says, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. Again, if while you are waiting, the Lord needs to renew your strength, it's not an easy wait. But God doesn't call us to an easy wait. And this is where we find David. David has been anointed. He's been chosen by God to be the king of Israel. And before God even chose him, he identified David as a man after his own heart. So God had already seen the character traits, the quality, the faithfulness in David's heart. God still wasn't done with him yet. David still his character needed a little tweaking. God was still refining him, making him into the man that he needed him to be to lead his people. And if we look through the Psalms, we can see how God was working in David's life. We can see how David was turning his heart completely to the Lord. So we're going to look at Psalm 23 and then Psalm 57, if you want to turn there. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So again, even as David starts out, he identifies whom he is following, the Lord, and I shall not want. David, again, is saying that he is satisfied with the way that the Lord is taking care of his needs, what the Lord is providing for him. He says he shall not want. Verse 2, he makes me to lie down in green pasture and leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. This isn't an anxious David. This isn't a David who's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. This is a peaceful David. This is a David who is trusting in the Lord. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. He is submitting to the Lord. He is allowing the Lord to lead him in the paths of righteousness. He's obeying the Lord. Verse 4, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Even though David has been chosen, he knows that he has been anointed to be the king of Israel, and yet he still knows that there will be hard times. He doesn't expect that God is going to remove all the obstacles. He doesn't expect an easy way. He knows that he will walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but he also confidently knows that the Lord is with him and that the Lord will protect him. Verse 5, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. God is filled with thankfulness, with gratitude, with love. His cup is running over with thankfulness to the Lord. Verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. God has instilled within him a loyalty, a faithfulness. David is going to dwell with the Lord forever. Psalm 57 also shows how the Lord is working on David. So Psalm 57 was written as David was fleeing for his life from Saul. So at this point, Saul has become jealous of David's popularity, and he has ordered all of his men to kill David. So David has had to leave his home and his family and is daily running for his life, is daily trying to stay alive. And this is the psalm that, one of the psalms that he wrote during this time frame. Be merciful to me, O God, be merciful to me, for my soul trusts in you. And in the shadow of your wings I will make my refuge until these calamities have passed by. David is surrounded by an army of men who have come to work alongside him, to help him stay safe. And yet David's not putting his trust in those armies to save him. He is putting his trust, my soul trusts in you. He's putting his trust in the Lord alone. And he knows that this will pass. He knows the plan that God has for his life, even in the midst of running for his life, even in the midst of Saul trying to kill him. He knows that God has already chosen him to be the king, and so this will pass. Verse 2, I cry out to the God Most High, to God who performs all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save me. He reproaches the one who would swallow me up, Selah. God shall send forth his truth, his mercy, and his truth. He knows that the only way he's out of this mess is through God, and he speaks as if God has already rescued him. He knows that God will send from heaven to save him. He knows that Saul will be reproached. He's confident of his Lord. Verse 4, my soul is among lions. I lie among the sons of men who are set on fire, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have dug a pit before me. In the midst of it all, They themselves have fallen. Selah. So David is well aware of his circumstances, and yet he's crying out to the God Most High, who performs all things for me. He knows that it's God who's going to save him. Verse 7, my heart is steadfast. O God, my heart is steadfast. I will sing and give praise. Awake, my glory. Awake, lute and harp. I will awaken the dawn. I will praise you, O Lord, among the peoples. I will sing to you among the nations, for your mercy reaches unto the heavens, and your truth unto the clouds. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let your glory be above all the earth. David is in the midst of the trial. He is in the midst of fleeing for his life, and yet he's singing praises to the Lord. He's worshiping the Lord, not on the other side of the trial, not after God has gotten him through, but in the midst of the trial, so confident in the Lord that the Lord will bring him through, that he's praising him now for the victory. Now, David had been anointed the king. He'd already been chosen, and yet he never exerted that right. He never went against the Lord. There were several times that he could have taken the life of Saul, and the men that were with him were encouraging him, take Saul's life, take your rightful place on the throne, but David refused. He knew that God had put Saul on the throne for that time, and that when the time was right, God would remove Saul from the throne and place him on the throne. And he was willing to wait for God's timing. He didn't go ahead of God. He didn't exert his own will against Saul. He was waiting for his time. He was waiting for the Lord. Now, as we look in the Bible, there are several people in the Bible that didn't wait for the Lord's timing. They knew the Lord's promise, but they decided to take matters into their own hands. For Abraham and Sarah, for example, was the first people that came to my mind. God came to Abraham when he was 75 and said, out of you I will make a great nation, a nation whose numbers will outnumber the stars of the sky and the sands along the shore. He was 75 at that time without even one son. But Sarah and Abraham believed that that was God's plan. They believed that his word was true. They believed that God would keep his promise. But year after year after year after year, as they were waiting, they didn't doubt that God's word was true, but Sarah decided that maybe God needed a little help keeping his promise. And we know we're in trouble if we think we can help God keep his word. So Sarah decided that maybe God meant for the nation to come through Abraham, but maybe through her handmaiden Hagar instead. So he sent Hagar in to Abraham to conceive a son, and sure enough, she conceived Ishmael, but that wasn't God's promised son. God was starting a nation by his hands, by his way. He wanted everyone to know and to not doubt that this nation was from him and by him. And Ishmael was man's doing. They had manipulated that event. And God's not going to fulfill his plans through manipulation. So 25 years later, after God had made the promise to Abraham, Isaac was born. That God allowed Sarah at 90 to conceive Isaac, which again was purely by the hand of God, which proved to everyone around, every nation around the Israelites, that it was God who started the nation. But even though God's purposes were accomplished, his plan was accomplished, there were still consequences for Abraham and Sarah taking matters into their own hands. First of all, Ishmael and Hagar were sent away, and Abraham never got to see his son grow into adulthood. He didn't get to spend his life with his son. And today, we even bear the consequences. Ishmael is the ancestor of the Arab nation, whereas Isaac is the ancestor of the Hebrew nation. And still today, those two people groups are in conflict. So even today, there are consequences for that decision. One generation later, Isaac and Rebekah. Isaac and Rebekah were married. Rebekah was pregnant with twins. And the Lord said to her that the older would serve the younger. Well, it was tradition at that time in the Hebrew culture that when the father passed away, that all of the property and the rights and responsibility would pass on to the older son. So it didn't make sense that the older son would be serving the younger son, but it was part of God's plan. It's what God, the way God wanted to work things. So Rebekah knew that. Rebekah knew that that was his plan. Well, when it came time for Isaac to pass on his blessing, Rebekah didn't trust the Lord to work that out. She and Jacob manipulated, and they deceived. They lied to Isaac and tricked him into passing the blessing on to Jacob. Well, again, there were consequences for that action. Even though God's will was still served, his will was still done, the older would serve the younger. One of the immediate consequences for that was Jacob had to flee for his life because Esau wanted to kill him. And Rebekah never saw her beloved Jacob alive again. She never got to see him the rest of her life. So there are consequences. God has a plan. He has a purpose for our lives, but he wants to fulfill them. Pastor Derek's mentioned the cruise line captain several times, and I thought of that as well, that, you know what, the plan was charted out, the course was charted out, and even the small deviation that this captain made off of the course affected thousands of lives. You know, God has a purpose and a plan. He has the course laid out for each one of our lives, and even a small deviation off that course can affect thousands around us, can affect for generations to come. All of us are waiting. All of us are waiting for something, and not some inconvenience like waiting in the grocery store line. All of us are waiting for major change in our lives. Some of us are waiting for a prodigal child to return home. Some of us are waiting for a healing that we don't see happening this side of heaven. Some of us are waiting for a child with disability to reach the next developmental level or any developmental level. Some of us are waiting for husbands to be the spiritual leader of our home. Some of us are just waiting for a husband. But we're all waiting. We're all waiting for something. And as believers, we're waiting for the second coming of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We are longing for heaven. We are all waiting. But in that waiting, we are also being molded and shaped into our Lord, this image of our Lord Jesus Christ. Waiting can be debilitating unless it's marked by a hope in God. Waiting for a believer is not a futile, last-ditch effort, an act of someone who's desperate without any other option. Waiting is the confident that we experience as believer is confidently knowing that eventually God will set things right. Even if it's not on our timetable, even if it's not when we would like, God will set things right. In Hebrews 12:1, Paul tells us to run with perseverance the race that has been set before us. Hebrews 10:35 and 36 says, "Do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised." He has promised to be with us, even when we're persevering. Persevering means that while we are waiting, we don't swerve off the course, off the path that he has given for us, or lose faith in the process, even during our greatest trial, our greatest suffering, even when today we can't see past our present circumstances, even when we can't see to the future that he has promised us. We still need to stay the course, and God will bless that obedience. But it's not only waiting, it's not only the act of waiting, it's how we wait. While we wait, will we take comfort for the Lord? Will we believe his word to be true? Will we learn the lessons that he has for us, allowing him to refine us, even if it's being refined by fire? Will we sing praises to him and worship him, even as we wait for a miracle, for a divine intervention? Will we hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess? Waiting in hope means that we rest our faith and expectation not in what God will do for us, but in God who is our hope and expectation. Micah 7:7 says, "But as for me, I watch in hope for the Lord. I wait for God, my Savior. My God will hear me." Psalm 30, verse 5, I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in his word I do hope. Isaiah 30:18 says, yet the Lord longs to be gracious to you. He rises to show you compassion, for the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. As I said at the beginning, waiting is not my strength, let me just tell you. I have things planned out. When I am waiting at the doctor's office, I have a list of things that I need to do, or that my husband needs to do, or that my kids need to do, but I make lists. And amen. Keeps me organized. But and again, I said that I am waiting to be placed in the foreign mission field. Well, in the meantime, God has allowed me short trips into the mission field. And the first time we went to Mexico, my husband and I, and there were 4 others of us that were going to build a water treatment system for an orphanage. And we had never met the people in the orphanage. We had just kind of been communicating and organizing the date. And I had my agenda, what time we were going to leave. The car was packed the night before, and I was ready to go. So the people that were traveling with us were a little bit late. They didn't realize my time schedule. So they get there a little bit late, and someone's suitcase was bigger than what I had told them it could be. So we had to unload the car and repack the car. And so we ended up leaving about an hour later than I had. But it was okay, because then I was revising my list along the way of how we could get things done. So we get over the border, again, like I said, about an hour and a half later than I had planned. And we were unloading the car. The guys were unloading the water treatment system, doing their guy thing. And then myself and another woman we had brought over fresh fruits and vegetables and rice and potatoes, things that we thought, actually at the last minute, we thought, well, maybe this would be helpful to them. So we brought those over, and we're unloading it and just taking it to, it's kind of a kitchen-ish area. We were taking it in there, and the kids were outside just playing. And it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon by the time we get there. I had planned on getting there about noon. And so we get there and just start unloading. And we take this fresh food into the kitchen, where there's some ladies that were there, and we communicate and give it to them. Immediately, they say hi to us, but immediately they start opening up the fruits and the vegetables, and they start, peeling the potatoes, cutting things up, and they put it in this huge pot of water that was sitting on the stove, empty, and they immediately filled that pot with the food that we had brought with us. Now, if everybody had followed my agenda and we had gotten there when I wanted to get there, then God would not have been able to provide for the needs of all the kids in that orphanage. Because I was forced to wait, again, I didn't wait willingly, but because I was forced to wait, God was able to provide a miracle for those kids. And when I talked to the gentleman who ran the orphanage later, I said, nobody was stressed out. The kids weren't like, when are we going to eat? It's past lunchtime. Nobody was worried about it at all. Everybody was just going about the day. And when I asked the gentleman, I was like, how did you know that we would bring food? And he said, I just prayed Jesus' prayer. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, give us this day our daily bread. And sure enough, we arrived with that daily bread. I can't imagine living my life that way. And yet they had such a peace just waiting on the Lord. They were so confident that no matter what, when in the midst of their circumstance, they didn't see food coming. They didn't know we were bringing anything. They had no idea how God was going to provide. But they waited in the Lord, and they knew that he would provide. And how much more peaceful our lives would be if we just waited on the Lord. We know who God is. We know he loves us. We know his plans for us are good, to bring us a hope and a future. Why do we spin our wheels? Why do we try to get things done ourselves? Why do we try to make lists and work things out our way? Let's just trust in the Lord. What a peace that would bring to our lives. So I think that as I'm waiting, maybe this is part of my waiting process, my training process, is to be up here and speak to you. But God, let's allow God to refine us, to change us as we are waiting. As Titus 2:13 says, we wait for the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. So we will wait, but it depends on how we wait. God will refine us in the waiting process if we allow him. So I'd like you guys to think. We're going to have a little time afterwards, after I talk, but I'd like you to share with your group where God has you waiting right now, what he has you waiting for. And pray for one another that God will give you the strength, because we need the strength. And his word says that we need his strength to continue waiting. But know that that waiting is for our benefit, for our good, that God is refining us, that God is molding us and shaping us into his son, Jesus Christ. Let's pray. God, I thank you for your word, and I thank you that you are faithful and true. God, I thank you for those times of waiting, for those excruciating times of waiting. God, that you are just stripping away all those things that we are depending on. That, God, you are just drawing our focus back to you. I thank you for the life of David that we can look at, and how he went through the circumstances of running for his life, God, that he knew the plan for his life, and yet he waited for you to bring that plan to pass. God, please help us to wait patiently on you. Help us not to intervene and to do things our way in our time, God, but to know you well enough, to be confident in you, to know that you will bring things together in your time, so that you will get the glory. God, I thank you for these ladies here, and I thank you that you have all of us in a different time of waiting, and it's because you love us, because you want more for us than we already are. God, I just ask that you be with us now as we share what you are doing, and God, give us your strength. In the name of Jesus, amen.